Hi, everyone, and welcome to our very first episode of Swatch and Learn. Thanks so much for being here with us today. My name is Stephanie Sheridan, and I will be your host, along with Lisa Rubel, the editor of the Fat Quarterly. And we also have a very special guest, fabric designer Kimberly Einmo. The Fat Quarterly has been in print for over 25 years. It was started by the late Susan Neal, who was the vice president of Benartex, as a way to share our amazing fabrics directly with you, our consumers. While the format and the articles contained in the publication has changed a bit throughout the years, the one thing that has not changed is our dedication to the quilting community and to you, our subscribers. I want to thank you all for being here today and just remind you that we will have time for a question and answer session at the very end of the episode today. So during the show, if you have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A box that you see along the bottom of your screen. And you can use the chat box to say hi. And I see there's lots of people from, let's see, upstate New York, Maryland, Iowa, Kentucky, Indiana. I bet everybody's nice and cold like we are. I'm in central Pennsylvania. Lisa is in Michigan, and Kimberly is in Colorado, correct?
That's right.
So we're all in chilly states today. I guess even in Florida it's cold today, though. So we have lots of fun and exciting things to share with you today, and we're going to get started with Kimberly showing us her Upwards fabric collection. We'll start with a quick video, and then Kimberly can tell us all about it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Stephanie and Lisa, for having me. I'm so excited about being the first featured designer and so thrilled to introduce my Upwards line. This is a line that has been in my heart and in my head for many years, and working with Benartex made it all come true. So I'm thrilled to introduce it to you. I have some fun screen shares to share with you. So bear with me while I share my screen and get this started so we can, let's see how do I do that? Share, there we go. Stephanie, are you all seeing that? Yep, good. I'm getting the thumbs up. All right, so Upwards is all about uplifting words. I am an optimistic person and I love to encourage. If I said that I had a gift to give, it would be the gift of encouragement, because I love to encourage quilters, no matter when it's with their skills or how to be fearless with use of color and prints. And Upwards is a culmination of a lot of words that I hope people will find uplifting and encouraging. So let's just jump right in. And of course, we have the panel. It was very important to me to have a panel. And I love that. They kind of classify my designs as contempo, and I think that's the perfect fit for me because I like clear, saturated colors. I like things that just are cheerful. And so for this was the panel, and I just think it's a great way to have some encouraging words that people can see and use, and hopefully it makes them smile. That's what it's all about. So from the panel, we have two word prints, and this is kind of like the main print, and it comes in three colorways in white, yellow, and navy. And it's again got those words and small snippets of encouragement taken from the good book, some of them, but not overtly. So it's just meant is a fun way because I love word prints. Word prints are fun to me, just to get those into your quilts so that when your eye catches them, maybe it's an encouragement to you. And then from there, we have this selection of word prints. This is the other word prints in the collection, and it comes in four colorways, the white, the sky, pink, and navy. What I love about the white is I've used it so often for my backgrounds. And it's actually kind of like a very light gray tone on tone. But if you want it even, here's a great tip. If you want it even more subdued, use the wrong side. And I've done both. I've used the right side of the fabric and I've flipped it over and used the wrong side. So it was even a little more demure and subtle. But when you get up close to the quilt or the project or whatever you're looking at, you can see the words. And so it kind of reads more like a solid when you stand back, but when you get up close, you can see the words. So these are the two word prints that kind of anchor the whole line. But I'm a big fan of blenders and geometrics. And I love this because these next prints will go with so many other fabric collections or fabrics that you may already have. Here we've got floating. And you'll see these gentle waves kind of echoed throughout some of the other prints, which I love. And it comes in five colorways. Again, I used that white or that light gray tone on tone for a lot of backgrounds. It's just perfect with so many different prints, and you'll find yourself reaching for that. In fact, I ordered bolts of that and bolts of the tone on tone in the white and the gray because those are great background blenders. So waves or floating, I use a lot. And then we have a print called Loves that comes in three colorways, navy, aqua, and yellow, with the hearts, the sweet little hearts. Again, these are meant to be used with the collection, but also used in with so many other prints. You'll find yourselves reaching for them. And it really is a stripe, but you can use it just kind of however you want. I do love stripes and geometrics. So waves is again carrying that theme of the wavy print. Here we have the three colorways in rose, teal, and sunshine. And I love the way that this adds so much movement and excitement, and it adds a real dynamite effect when you put this print in with the other prints. It's really nice. It is great cut on the bias for your bindings. I love it, love it, love it for bindings. And then I threw in these two. I love using decorative stitches on my machine. And these deco stitches are literally like stitched out decorative stitches from your machine. Again, great for anywhere in your blocks or anywhere for your bindings. These are great for borders, but really, really fun because it adds a lot of movement and a lot of eye-catching interest. So this is another favorite of mine. And so now I have some quilts and projects just to give you some ideas. We're here to talk about a couple specific ones, but I wanted to show you, I have two free patterns available on the BetterTech site or on my own website at kimberlyeinmo.com. This is Woven Hearts, and it's fun. These blocks are like Lay's potato chips. You can't just make one. Once you get started, it's really, really fun, and it's a great fat quarter friendly project. And if you're a little more religiously inclined, you can turn those woven hearts into cross hearts. So these are my two free patterns. Be sure and go download those patterns because you'll want to have these. These are great for gifts or just as for yourself to give yourself a little love. And then I have Threads of Wisdom, which is a super way to use those panel prints. And a panel comes with 6 of those different smaller panels, and you'll find those. But you could also make your spool blocks with just some of the word prints or whichever print you like. And then here's Starshine, a fun way to combine those panels or just some plain print fabric, the hearts and stars or the word prints. So this is a great way to combine those panels and word prints. Here's a fun little quilt that'll take you an afternoon to whip up called Charming Circles. And it's great for using charm packs or those little 5-inch squares that we're going to talk about. And here's some more great ideas for quilts. And these are by Material Girls and Berry Patch. Again, you can find this more information on the Benetech's website or the websites you see linked right here. And of course, we're here to talk about Fat Quarterly Magazine. And so this was fun because you get not only the magazine, but you get a piece of every print in the line. All 20 prints are featured, and you get those with the magazine. And the challenge for me was, how can I use all 20 pieces in a project that's not actually a quilt? So I challenged myself and came up with this Japanese inspired rice bag. It's a little drawstring bag that you can make in about 2 hours. So for more inspiration, just real quick, we've got these by Annie, different totes. And here's some more just for fun things I've done. Combined some little irons with some of the spool blocks. You can even make your own sneakers. There are sneaker kits out there that you can buy and actually make your own sneakers. Here was another quilt I made just using those prints. This hangs on the entranceway in our hall because I grew up with those Sunday sermons. So this just was a fun way for me to kind of depict hometown. And I combined the hearts and the stars together. And finally, last but not least, I have some great information about a new free block of the month that's going to launch in May. It's going to run for 6 months. You'll be making this quilt. It's going to be free. We're going to have more information about this. Your local dealers, Janome dealers will have kits to sell, but your local quilt shops can get all the information for exactly how much fabric you're going to need of Upwords. They can kit it for you if you want. We're going to have lots more information about this coming very, very soon. I'm literally making it now. The pattern's in tech editing, and I hope you'll consider joining me from May to October because I'll have free video tutorials and the pattern will be free. And I just hope you'll have as much fun with this skill building quilt because I'm going to be teaching lots of skills along with this, making this a fun, beautiful, lighthearted sampler. And I hope you'll join me. I'll turn it back to you, Stephanie.
Great. Thank you so much, Kimberly. That the block of the month is really pretty. So will it be available on your website or the
Yes,
Janome
both.
website? Both.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be linking everything. We'll have there will be YouTube videos. There will be on social media. The videos will be launched on social media on Facebook. And there's the Janome Sewing Machines page will have it. The Janome Sewing Classroom will have it. I'll have links through my website, KimberlyEinmo.com, and you'll be able to find it on YouTube. So we're going to have it all over. It'll be really easy to find. And once a month, we'll be launching the videos, the tutorials to walk you through every step of the process.
That's fantastic. I'm sure lots of our viewers are looking forward to
It's going to
working
be
with you
fun.
on that project.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, so next we're going to go to Lisa Rubel. Lisa designed the plaid patchwork quilt that's featured on the cover of this issue, and she has some great tips for making the project.
Thanks, Stephanie. As Stephanie said, I am Lisa Rubel. I am the editor of the Fat Quarterly, and I have been, I was thinking back, I believe since 2015. And so that means that 4 times a year, I put together the content for the Fat Quarterly, including creating one of the projects featured in the Fat Quarterly. And so it's always exciting when we as a team choose the fabric line that we're going to use, because then I get to start thinking about what my project will be. And so when I design a quilt for the Fat Quarterly, I have several goals in mind. My first off is to design an attractive quilt that quilters will want to both make and then either use or give away, but something that they will enjoy. And second is to show off those fabric swatches, because we're giving you those 5-inch squares, and we want a project that will really let those shine, and just so we can all enjoy the beauty of the fabrics. And then as I'm working on the design, I'm also thinking about the border, because some of the focal prints, you see them in the 5-inch square, but you don't really, they don't get full justice of how beautiful they are in that 5-inch square. So I'm often thinking about what kind of border can I put on a quilt that would allow that beautiful fabric to show. And then, of course, like Kimberly said, you're working with a finite number of swatches. And in this case with Upwords, it was 20. So figuring out a design where you can use ideally all of the swatches and really help them come to life in the scope of the whole project. And I had a lot of fun playing with the Upwards fabrics because they are so uplifting and cheerful, and such a great variety of colors to work with. And when Kimberly started talking about how that white and gray print was such a great background fabric, you can see I've got the quilt behind me right here, and absolutely it is, because I used it as well. And so when I'm designing a project for the Fat Quarterly, I pretty much start with what's going to be my background, because I want something that's going to allow all of those 5-inch squares to show. And in this collection, we were lucky enough to have two background prints, both the white and gray versions of the words, and then the floating, which I in my head call plaid. So you'll hear me call it plaid as well as floating. So I decided that if I used both background prints, I could add a little more interest to the design by having blocks with alternating backgrounds, just a little more subtle look for that background instead of having them all be the same. So it was really fun to have both of those to work with. And for my actual quilt design, I actually drew inspiration from the floating, the plaid print. And I decided I wanted to make a quilt that had that plaid patchwork effect to it. And so I went with a simple 9-patch block, because I knew that it would allow these center squares to shine. So I knew I was going to be using the white and gray prints in the corners and the focal print in the center, and then I needed to pick the other 4 squares. And again, I had multiple choices, which is such a treat, because you don't always have that with collections where you have a lot of different options of which colorways to go. And so I knew that because the plaid, the floating, and the wavy stripe came both in the blue aqua and the yellows and the reddish pinks, I knew that I had 3 different choices of how I could put my blocks together in terms of colors. And I wanted to choose just one of those 3 combinations, because I didn't want that to draw attention away from those focal squares. Now, I design quilts in Adobe Illustrator, and one of the great things about doing that is it's super easy with just the click of a mouse to be able to switch fabrics in and out. So before I even cut any fabric, I auditioned all of those different prints in my quilt design to see which colorway I wanted to go with, the blues, the yellows, or the reddish pinks. So I'm going to show you the different options that I played with. All right, everyone seeing my screen? Thumbs up. Fantastic. So first we're going to start with the reds and the pinks. And what you'll see in these designs that I'm showing you is I also tried them in different border combinations. And I went with the navy heart and star border and the gold. I did not try the white because I had a lot of white going on already. So you'll just see it in the blue and the gold. And this is what it looks like in the reds and the pinks. And then if I go one screen further, you see it with the opposite border. And you'll notice as I show you these different versions, I'm also auditioning the inner border to see what would provide contrast between the center of the quilt and the border. So these are the two with the reddish pink. And while I like that, I felt like it was very bold and it didn't allow those prints to shine quite as much. So I moved on to the yellow. And here you can see the yellow with the blue border and then also with the yellow border. And as much as the yellows are super sunshiny and cheery, again, I felt like they were drawing too much attention away from those center squares. And I really wanted those to be the stars of the show. So I moved on to the blue. And here you can see the blues with the yellow border. And then I did the pink floating for the inner border. And then with the blue. And obviously, as you can see from the quilt behind me on the wall, this is ultimately the version that I went with. And I chose this because, first of all, I'm a little biased. Blues, teals in particular, are my favorite color. So when I'm given a choice, I almost always gravitate in that direction. But also, I felt like this was a very calming background to allow all of those center squares to kind of stand out on their own. And then by choosing that outer blue focal print for the border, that tied the blues in and framed the blue squares really nicely. And I put the yellow as the inner border because it provided contrast. I tried the reddish pink in there as well, and there was just too much pink with all of the hearts. So this was the final version I came up with. And it's so nice to have an idea of what your quilt is going to look like before you finish it. And so it was great that I could try all of those different options and come up with what I thought was going to be the best quilt to put in the magazine and share with you all. I'm going to stop sharing. And then the one other thing is that Kimberly was talking about the wavy stripe for the border. And as she said that, I was regretting that I had not used that as the border, as the binding. But I did go with using the same print for the border and the binding, just so that it just kind of went out to the edge and there was not an extra little line around the outside. And it made that border stand out a little bit more. So now that I've talked to you a little bit about my design process for creating this quilt, I'm going to come over to my cutting board and I'm going to give you a tip on pressing and assembling these blocks together. So I've got two sample blocks that are partially made. And when I go to press my seams, I'm a seam presser in one direction or the other. I'm not personally a fan of pressing the seams open for two reasons. One, I like to create the nesting effect, which I'll talk about in a minute, when you've got the seams pressed to one direction. And second of all, when I go to open the seams to press them open with the iron, I feel like I always burn my finger with the iron. And so by pressing to the side, I keep my fingers safe as well. So the key for pressing when you do these blocks, both for putting the squares together, the rows together, and then the blocks themselves together, because there's no sashing between them, is that you want to press the seams the opposite direction from the one block to the other. So I have this turned upside down. So you can see for all of my striped blocks here, I pressed the squares, the seam allowances for the squares in the center row out to the sides. And then in the top row and the bottom row, I pressed it towards the center. So this means that when I go to join the rows of the block together, first of all, I can check how those seams meet and get them to be as accurate as possible. And when I go to line them up, I've got seam allowances going in one direction from the top row and the other direction from the center row. So they bump up against each other and they nest. And this means that when I'm sewing, it's going to help me ensure that those seam lines are joined as perfectly as possible. So, like I said, when I do the striped one and I turn it over to show you, with the striped blocks, I press the center row seam allowances out and the top and bottom row seam allowances in. So then when I go to the plaid block, I'm going to do the opposite. So for the center row, I'm going to press my seam allowances in, and for the top and bottom row, I'm going to press the seam allowances out. And same thing when I sew the horizontal to sew the rows together. And this means that then when I've got my blocks pieced together and I'm going to sew them together, in addition to having all the seams nested and being nice and flat in each block, I'm going to have that same situation as I join the blocks. So if I flip this one over, you can see this top row, I've got these seams pressed in towards my center square. And when I lay this block on top, I've got my seams pressed out. So when I go to join these and pin them, my seams are nested together. So I won't have a lot of thickness there, and the bulk of the seam allowances will nest up against each other and bump as I sew, which will help me to create a nice joined seam between the two. So that is my pressing tip when you're putting these blocks together in order to have all of your seam joins be as perfect as possible.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Those are great tips. Oh, I am unmuted. I had a little delay there and I was talking, but my screen said I was muted, but my light didn't. But uh, we're good now. So thank you so much for all of those great tips, Lisa. So at this point, we're going to do a short poll, and we're going to pop a little question up on your screen. And for those of you that have been to our virtual fabric show, you know that if you answer the question, at the end of the show, we'll pick someone to win a fabulous fabric prize. So if you all want to take a minute and read the question and give us your answer to it, we'll then go ahead and move on to our next project feature. We'll leave that up for just 1 minute. All right, and then we'll go ahead and we'll move on to our next project feature. We're going to go back to Kimberly, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the Japanese rice bag that she created.
Okay, Lisa, I loved that you showed the different fabric options, the color options. I mean, they're dynamite. That red and pink thing. I mean, it's like I want to make it like in that colorway too. It's so pretty. And I use EQ software, electric quilt software, because again, I'm always auditioning things first. And it really helps when you use some sort of computer software, and it's very easy to either scan these images into that software so you could actually play with the fabrics themselves. So I love that. And I love that you showed the different colorways because that was really beautiful. So that was awesome. So wanted to talk to you, for those of you who have the magazine, I'm sure a lot of you do, since you're signed up and you're here. This was a great issue. I'm a little biased, but be sure and check out this on the second page. This picture of the shoes with the little Japanese rice bag. Those are Lisa's shoes. I'm in love with her shoes. Be sure and check that out. Just wanted to point that out. It was one of my favorite things. But anyway, the instructions for making the Japanese rice bag are right inside the magazine, and they're actually very good, and you'll have no trouble following along. It takes about 2 hours to make this from start to finish, and you do get to use all of the prints that came with the magazine, all 20 of the prints. I even have that here. So it comes like that, which is great. I'm going to screen share again so I can show you my tips for putting this together. So hang in there with me. while I start this again. And there we go. That was where we left off. And let's see. Why is it not? There we go. So I wanted to do something a little different. I love coming up with projects that I kind of call done before dinner. Means you can make them in an afternoon, and this is definitely one of those. This is something you can make very quick and easy. And if you've got a youngster or a neighbor or a friend that you're teaching to sew, this is a project where they can see kind of instant gratification. It's easy enough that they can put it together with a little guidance from you and feel like they're walking away with a finished project. So I have a couple hints, not going to go through the whole tutorial because I have a very good way to watch this. I've done a video tutorial, and here's the links where you can find it. So if you've got your phone handy, take a picture of the screen right now. You can find this on the Janome Sewing Machines Facebook page. You can find it on my website under kimberlyeinmo.com/Janome. And because for those of you who don't know, I am Janome's national spokesperson, so got to get a little plug in there for them too. But you can also just go to YouTube, and if you do a search, if you type in the search, done before dinner, Japanese rice bag, this will pop up. And I wanted to point that out. I literally tested that out myself to make sure. If you don't have the links, just go and do a search on YouTube. And it's a great video tutorial that walks you through step by step by step for making it. However, I had done the video before I actually made the rice bag using the Upwords fabric. So I have some little tips about how to use all the fabrics. So here's what you're going to need. You're going to need the 25-inch squares of Upwords that come with the Fat Quarterly magazine. Then you're going to need 5 7.5-inch squares of lining, 5 7.5-inch squares of batting, 2 2.5-inch strips for your drawstrings, and 2 2.5-inch strips for your tabs. So I've got it all laid out there in the picture, and hopefully you can see that it's really not much to put together. And I really encourage you to use the leftover scraps of batting you may have laying around your house already. This is a perfect chance. You can even piece them together because you just need a very low loft batting, and it's very, very easy to do, but use up your scraps. So the first thing you're going to want to do is construct your 5 4-patch units. And like Lisa was talking about with the nesting of the seams, that's exactly what I love to do. And I did the same thing here. I just nested the seams. So when I sewed 2 5-inch patches together, I pressed the seams one way, and then the other 2 patches that were going to make the 4-patch units, I pressed the seam the other way, so that when you put those two patches together to create your 4-patch, you nest those seams. It makes it really perfect to get a great center precision point when you're making your 4 patches. So here you can see what the 4 patches look like. Take time to kind of mix up those prints any way that you would like. But when you get this done, each of those 4 patches will measure 9.5 inches square unfinished. So we need to trim them down to 7.5 inches. And I've got a great tip for how easy this is. So you're going to take any square ruler, and you're going to put the 3 3/4 inch mark on your ruler on top of that center intersection of your 4-patch units. That's all you have to do. Then you're going to line up and make sure that you've got those 3 3/4 inch lines or little hash marks on your ruler, whatever you have, on the seam lines. And then you trim the right and across the top. So you're gonna, if you're a left-hander, you would do up the left side and across the top. But if you're a right-handed cutter, just go up the right side and across the top. Then you're going to take your 4-patch unit, rotate it 180 degrees, lay your ruler back down with those 3 3/4 inch markings on your ruler right on the center of your 4-patch, and trim the rest. And that's really all there is to it. Now you have 5 different 4-patch units that all measure 7.5 inches perfectly, and you're ready to start the whole tutorial process if you're watching the video, and you can follow along to finish the rice bag. So that's really all there is to it. I think that is it from my slides. But I'm going to stop the share here and go back here. There we are. And again, you're going to want to make this is really a fun project. It's a really cute little purse, for carrying things. I love to carry all kinds of stuff in the car when we're taking road trips. I throw my little projects in progress in there. It's a great thing for many different uses. And I hope you will have fun making this and the quilt that Lisa did. I'm off with my new pack. I'm going to break into it and make the quilt that Lisa has shown. And I think I'm going to try that red colorway because that was just dynamite. So I think that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to flip it back to you, Stephanie, and take it from there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the tips on cutting those because I know sometimes it can be hard cutting pieces down and getting them accurate, and that was a great tip. Thank you so much. Okay, so another popular article in each issue of the Fat Quarterly is the block remix, where we take a classic quilt block and we ask some of our quilting friends to give it a bit of a makeover. For this issue, we chose the Rolling Stone block, and I'm going to do a quick share screen and show you. Okay, can everyone see that? We good? All right. So this is block remix. What happens when a classic quilt block gets a bit of a makeover? For this issue, we chose the Rolling Stone block, and it is essentially a 9-patch block. We kind of went with the 9-patch theme for this issue, and I didn't even realize it. Um, and it has 3 components to it. So you have a center square, you have 4 square and a square units in the corners, and then you have 4 double rectangle units, and that is the classic Rolling Stone block. So the makeovers, the first one is from Brianna Roberts. She was one of our ambassadors last year, and she created the peppermint twist block. And she felt that the block needed a little bit of sweetness to it, and she thought of the old-fashioned Star Mint candies. So that was her inspiration. And she used the Transparency Watercolors fabric collection, and it turned out beautiful. Here's the entire Transparency Watercolors collection, and it was designed by Modern Quilt Studio. And then lastly for this one, I just colored up a quick inspirational quilt to show you what these blocks would look like in a quilt. So on the right-hand side, you have the inspirational quilt. It's 3 blocks by 4 blocks. And I used the darker pink as the border and then used the green as the binding. And on the left-hand side, you can see the 9-patch and the pieces that Brianna used to create this look in her block remix of the Rolling Stone block. So next up, we have Starlight. Starlight is by Belle Bruner. She was, again, one of our former ambassadors. And her spin was to add some diagonal lines in certain sections of the block, and it created a friendship star look. Belle used the Cottage Core collection by Jessica Flick, And it's a beautiful forest wonderland collection, um, with foxes and mushrooms and definitely very cottagecore colors. And she used this one because it was perfect in her block, as the forest critters often rely on the night sky when roaming about. And then let's take a look at a little bit of inspiration for you. So on your right-hand side, you have the inspirational quilt. For this one, I took the blocks and I set them with a sashing, and then used that red color in the cornerstones, and then just added a single border and a binding. And on the left-hand side, you can see again the 9 patches with the square and a squares in the corner, the plain block in the center, but then for the top and bottom left and right blocks, she used a half square triangle and the 2 rectangle block married together. And then lastly, we have Sparkler by Kari Matthews. Kari was again one of our ambassadors last year, and she said that her block kind of reminded her of waving sparklers at night when she was a child. She replaced the squares and rectangles with triangles to give the block more points. Kari used the Cityscape Day collection by Amanda Murphy. And you can see the full collection here. Kari focused mostly on the coordinates to the collection, but this collection does have some absolutely beautiful panels and some large all-over prints as well. And then lastly, we have an inspirational quilt on the right-hand side. You can see I did this one as a square quilt with 4 blocks across and 4 blocks down. So it's a 16 patch. And then an inner border of the blue to make everything appear to float. And then I added a wider border and a binding. And then on the left-hand side, you can again see the 9 patch and how Kari laid that out to get this effect. And last, here are all the blocks together. So you can see the original block on the top left, and then below you can see the 3 variations of the Rolling Stone block. So I hope this was some good information for you as to all of these different blocks. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share. There we go. Okay, so just a quick little note about those blocks and the project mock-ups that I did. There aren't patterns for any of these. They're purely inspirational. But if you take a close look, you can kind of figure out how the pieces go together. And it also shows you the versatility of a classic quilt block and how you can change it up to your liking with just a little bit of imagination. So I'm just curious, have any of you ever wondered how we choose the photographs for our issues? If you have wondered about that, we're going to have Lisa tell us a little bit about the photography process and how we chose the photos for this issue.
There we go. Now I'm not muted. I have to say that doing the photography for the issue is definitely one of the more fun parts, besides, of course, making the quilt and interviewing designers like Kimberly for the profiles. But it's a lot of fun to figure out what we're going to do for the photos and then make those visions come to life. A little background here, I spent 8 years as a quilt magazine editor. And so during that time, I went to many photo shoots because every issue we had 12 or so quilts or projects that we needed to photograph. And I came away from those experiences with several good sort of concepts to follow for quilt photography. And so when we do a photo shoot for the Fat Quarterly, we take pictures of each project in more than one setting, just so we've got some options for our art director to work with when she's laying out the issue. And then also so that we have other fun things to share on social media as well. So you'll see both of the options. And if you look through the magazine, you'll see them in there as well. But I'm going to talk a little bit about how these images came to be. And I'm going to start sharing my screen and go to my presentation. There we go. So you may recognize the image on the left from inside the issue. And one of the first keys that we learned is that your goal is to make the quilt look its very best. And sometimes that means rearranging the quilt many, many times. We used to joke that if we were putting a quilt on a bed or on a couch, the first thing you would do is just kind of fluff it and then let it fall. And sometimes, however it fell was beautiful and you could use it that very first time. And sometimes you had to rearrange it, adjust it, move it, rotate it 14, 15 times before you got it exactly how you wanted it to be. So for this particular shot, we used a ladder as the sort of mechanism to be able to show off more of the quilt. And so we tried it both with an artful draping, as you see on the left, and then also a more structured fold, as you see on the right. And as we're laying out the quilt, some of the things that we're thinking about is which fabrics, which blocks are showcased front and center. If, say, you had a block that was one of the more plainer tonal fabrics, you may not want to have that be the one that's right at your focal point for looking at the quilt image. You may want one of the more interesting prints to be front and center. So we choose which direction we're going to put the quilt on based on that. We also want to make sure that you can, what I call, read the block, so that when you're looking at this quilt picture, you can see what the design is. You can see, in this case, that it is a 9-patch, and you can kind of get a sense for what the layout of the quilt blocks are, because that just helps it to register more in quilters' minds. And then also we look at the border and make sure, can we see enough of the border that it makes sense? Is it laid out flat so that you can get a really nice look at the fabric in it? Is it complementing the quilt center? So you put various folds into the quilt as you drape it out to take all of those things into account. And then the second thing that we learned is that color is super impactful. Whether it's walls, stools, or books, you can use color to tie the items in a scene together and make everything work. We chose a location for this issue's photo shoot that had both yellow walls and turquoise walls. So we had lots of options with walls that popped. And I really love the look that that creates behind a quilt or behind a project. And you can see we used it in both of our projects. And then the props. That turquoise stool works really well on the yellow wall. You'll notice in the next photo when I get there that we did not use it on the turquoise wall. So we've got props that will work with different colors. The books that you see in these pictures is actually a series of Roald Dahl books. And we chose them not because Roald Dahl is a wonderful author, although he is, but we chose them because the colors of the books worked really well with the project. We've got the yellows and the blues and the reddish pinks. And so we don't tell the librarians, but when we're choosing books, we are absolutely judging them by the cover when we're using them as props for our photo shoot. So if I go on to the next photo, this was the second option that we did for the quilt, and it's on a gray overstuffed easy chair. And you can see we've got that turquoisey blue wall in the back, and then the yellow pillow, which helps to bring out the yellow in the inner border of the quilt. And then if you look at the props again that are on the window behind, they bring out the same colors in the quilt. And those are the kind of things that help to tie a picture together. And just, you may not even notice what the props are, but the fact that all of the colors work nicely together just really helps to enhance the picture of the quilt. And then another key is sometimes you need to put the project to use. Yes, this is Kimberly's favorite. Kimberly, I'll have to email you these pictures for your files. But especially when you've got a bag, bags can be tricky to photograph because if they're not on a person, it's hard to judge the scale of the bag. It's hard to know what to do with the handles. If the handles fall, like if they're laying down, sometimes you can't see as much of the bag, which was not an issue with this because the straps on this are pretty skinny. But also right now that bag, that rice bag is stuffed with batting to make it nice and puffy. But even when you do that, sometimes the bags don't cooperate. So a lot of times a great way to showcase a bag is to put it in use. And by this, having someone hold it and use it like they would use it in real life. And the other benefit of that is that it kind of, for the viewer, it lets you as the quilter think this is how I could use this bag. And you see that a lot with fashion where it's, they try to put it in a scene where you think, oh, I could be that person in the scene wearing that jacket. I could be the person snuggled up under that quilt on that cozy chair, or I could be the person holding the bag. And so a lot of times we try to think about the use and how we can portray the project in its, I guess, natural environment so that it's something that quilters can really relate to and want to make. And then one other thing I wanted to point out between this picture and the next, which is we of course do like as well, and we don't want quite so many body parts in it. And you can see here we did it with the straps held up like someone was holding it and then also down. But if you look at this picture of the bag compared to the last one, you can see we're showing different sides of the bag. And that kind of goes back to my comment about the quilt blocks in the first pictures, because we've got, as we know from Kimberly, we've got 20 different swatches to choose from in terms of what's showing. And so we will turn the bag or turn the quilt so that we can have different options of which ones are showing and which ones just look especially good with the photography. Like here, we put the floating light aqua in the front because it really tied in with the wall color behind. And then with this one, we went with a different side of the bag so we could show off more swatches as we used both images in the issue. And so those are some of the things that we think about when we do the photography. So I hope that this glimpse into how our project images in the issue comes together makes you look at the photos in this issue and in future issues a whole new way as you now kind of know how we put them together. Like I said, this is one of my favorite parts of the issue, and it's so fun to start with a project and come up with an idea and then make that idea come to life and to create some great photos to share in the issue. And back to you, Stephanie.
Thanks, Lisa. So, with all of that said, I think we are done with all of our portions of the show, but now it's your turn. So if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A box. I haven't seen any come through. Um, Kimberly did answer the one, which is perfect. Someone asked, when does the fabric come out? This fabric is available at your local quilt shops now. So if you go into your local quilt shop and you don't see it, ask them if they can get a hold of their Benetech sales rep and order it in for you. Oh, another question just popped up. Let's see. When does the next issue of the Fat Quarterly go out? Lisa, I know you're working on it right now. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep. We are.
Okay, and I believe it ships out in
March.
March, late March, I believe.
Yep. Yep.
And so we'll probably be doing a another one of our Swatch and Learns, probably sometime in April or early May. Is it possible to purchase back issues? It is indeed. In each of your Fat Quarterlies, you should have a little, oop, where is it? You should have a little paper that looks like this. And that is where you can purchase back issues of our Fat Quarterly. And yes, the back issues do come with the swatch packs. Okay, and I see One question over here. How far in advance do you have to start designing the next fabric line? So Lisa and Kimberly are both fabric designers. Um, so I'll turn this over to Kimberly. You can kind of tell them how far out you're working, and then Lisa, you can as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. About anywhere from, I would say, 12 to 18 months. I'm already working on the next two lines. And I'm excited about that. It's hard not to tell you. But yeah, it takes a while. I'd say the quickest it could happen is probably 12 to 14 months. Typically, I think it's 16 to 18 months. Is that about right? You would think, Stephanie or Lisa? I think that's about right. It's
Yeah,
over a
that
year.
sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's over a year.
Lisa?
Yeah. Well, and I would say adding on to that, the one thing, and for years when I was interviewing designers for the Fat Quarterly, I would always run into this. I would call a designer and say, "Oh, I want to talk about, X, Y, and Z line." Like for example, with Kimberly, I want to talk about Upwards. But Kimberly worked on Upwards a year ago, and now she's working, two lines down the way. And it's like, okay, let me think back. Let me pull that one up because your head gets very much in the space of your new one. And there's that definitely that time gap because my first line just came out in December, January-ish, December, called Find Your Way. And I've got another one which I'm working on the patterns for now, and then the which will come out next fall, and then working on one for down the road beyond that, which I'm just starting art on. So you tend to have a line in multiple different stages that you're working on, whether it's designing the fabric, designing the patterns, or marketing and pushing the line out, helping shops to market it as well.
Great.
It is kind of interesting that you have to jump back and forth between the different lines. And Lisa's exactly right. In different stages, there's always something going, but they're in different gears. I guess would be a good way to put it. But it's
Yep.
fun. It's really fun.
It is. So, I know that somebody had mentioned about your oh, you just had a deer walk by behind you. You've got deer in the background.
Yeah, there's one back there right now. You can maybe see. Yeah, we get deer. Somebody on social media called me Snow White the other day because when we were in Australia, we had kangaroos. Now we have deer. So I love it. But yes, we've had deer recently.
That's
There's
awesome.
shelter. We have a deck, and then there's shelter from the snow and stuff. So they kind of hang out back there because I guess it's warmer, but it's still pretty cold.
Right. So Kimberly, somebody early on mentioned about your very cute, fluffy little helper in one of
Yeah,
your pictures.
Cheeto. Yeah, Cheeto was here.
Oh,
Cheeto, he was here for like 45 minutes and then he just got up, walked
and then
away.
of
But
course
he's
now he
usually,
takes off, right?
yeah, he's probably in the window looking at the deer. But
Probably.
can I drop a
Oh, that's
little?
a big buck.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He's looking in there going like, Candy Lady, is there any food? Sometimes we throw apples out, but yeah, just because we feel so sorry for him. But Cheeto is, I will drop a little hint. Cheeto's the inspiration for an upcoming line. So I'm very excited about that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure everybody can't wait to see it. And we are now at 3 o'clock, so we're gonna go ahead and start closing this episode. But first, I want to thank everybody for being here for our very first episode of Swatch and Learn. And we hope that you really enjoyed it. And a special thank you to Lisa and to Kimberly for sharing their projects and the fabric and joining me here on this episode.
Yeah, thank you,
I
everyone.
do.
I want to thank Lisa for making the whole process of working with her on the magazine so easy. And she's just really great to work with, as are you, Stephanie, and everyone at Better Tex. It's a real pleasure to be involved with you all. It really
Oh,
is.
thank you
Thank
so much, Kimberly.
Right back at you.
And let's see. So our fabric prize winner, congratulations, Marilyn Gore. You are the winner of our fabric prize for answering our poll question. We're going to reach out to you and get your mailing address. And lastly, we'd love to see what you create with your swatch packs. So I have mine here. I haven't done anything with it yet, but I've got some ideas. But we'd love to see what you create with your swatch packs. So if you want to share them, you can go to our Facebook group, which is Create Inspire Delight, and be sure to follow us on social media and to see all of the beautiful fabrics and the collections and get sneak peeks of things that are coming up soon. So I hope that you will join us all for our next episode in the spring. Like I said, it'll probably be April, May timeframe. We haven't set the date yet, but I hope you all join us then. And thank you again to Kimberly and to Lisa and to all of you for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.